Take a look at the skylines of Vancouver, Sydney, London, or New York. The sheer volume of glass, steel, and capital suggests a level of economic triumph that borders on the unimaginable. But the wealth radiating from those towers hides a harsh reality on the ground. Younger generations are locked out of secure homeownership, while the essential service workers who keep these cities functioning occupy increasingly precarious, cramped living conditions. Public health data from the 2020 pandemic points to a specific culprit: the overcrowded apartments of low-wage workers. In these units, the hyperinflation of land prices forced families to share kitchens and bathrooms, turning their homes into high-risk environments for viral transmission. While the wealthiest 10% of Manhattan residents could afford to flee the dense urban center, the essential workers checking groceries and driving buses had no choice but to stay, navigate crowded streets, and return to packed homes.
A city's skyline can easily distract from the truth. Behind the gleaming facades lies a socio-medical crisis driven by profound geographic and economic inequality. When policymakers confront this crisis, they usually fall back on a basic economic assumption. If housing costs too much, we just need to build more of it. Supply and demand will eventually lower the price. The data shows a completely different story. Across major global cities, we have added massive amounts of residential density. Construction costs, the literal price of wood, steel, and labor, have remained relatively stable for 30 years. Yet housing prices continue to skyrocket regardless of how many units we build. The true driver of this inflation is the literal dirt underneath the building. Notice how the footprint shrinks on this map, while the value explodes. Urban land takes up less than 5% of the total land mass in the United States and Canada, yet it accounts for over 90% of their total real estate dollar value. Urban land has ceased to be a basic utility for human shelter. It has mutated into a highly financialized global asset, traded and hoarded like stocks and bonds by investors across the planet. Economists have a specific term for the price of this dirt: land rent. This does not refer to the monthly check you write to your landlord. It is the intrinsic cost of the location itself, the premium you pay just to occupy a specific patch of earth. Throughout the 1980s, governments eagerly embraced deregulation. They removed protections and encouraged a global free flow of capital, turning this land rent into a premier investment vehicle for the world's wealthy. Look at this diagram of what economists call a doom loop. When well-intentioned cities attempt to solve the housing crisis by allowing taller buildings or handing out subsidies to renters, the local land market immediately absorbs that added value. The dirt simply gets more expensive. A local entrepreneur might build a thriving business, and service workers might put in grueling hours, but their hard-earned wealth is siphoned passively upward. It bypasses the local economy and flows directly into the accounts of the landowners and real estate investment trusts who hold the deed to the dirt. Wage earners are forced to surrender ever larger portions of their income just to exist in the city, while the investor class builds immense equity through land speculation. It is a modern form of feudalism, with the gates to financial security locked tightly on the outside. To see how we break this doom loop, we have to travel back to Vienna, immediately following the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire at the end of World War I. By 1913, landlords completely controlled the city. Rents were usurious. A quarter of the population lived in homeless asylums. Workers were packed 10 to a room, forced to rent beds in shifts so someone could sleep while the principal tenant was at work. But the fall of the monarchy brought universal suffrage, and with it a newly empowered working-class government. They immediately deployed a radical intervention: strict rent controls. They made it mathematically unprofitable for private landlords to operate in the city. When you legally remove the ability to extract high rents from tenants, the speculative value of the land vanishes. Land rent crashed, leaving the city government as the only viable buyer in the market. They scooped up the dirt for pennies. Now holding massive amounts of debt-free urban land, the city hired the best private architects and developers in the region to design robust, beautiful, high-quality public housing blocks for the working class. The results of this century-old policy are staggering. Today, nearly 50% of Vienna's residents live in high-quality, government-owned, or cooperative housing. A resident in one of these units pays a fraction of their monthly income for a secure, beautiful home. Compare that to a young worker in Sydney, London, or New York who routinely sacrifices half their paycheck to keep a roof over their head. Because Vienna removed such a massive percentage of its urban dirt from the speculative market, it effectively anchored the entire city. The private market simply cannot hyperinflate its own land prices when it has to compete with a massive supply of high-quality, affordable alternatives. The global housing crisis is a consequence of policy, driven by the decision to treat urban dirt as a financialized asset. By managing land as a public utility instead, we create cities capable of housing the people who actually built them.